My name is Karen, and at 30 years old, my boss said you did a great job, Karen, but we're promoting Thomas. I just smiled and gave them my resignation. I also sent them this link. 3 days later, they were begging me to come back. But it was too late. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. I walked into that meeting thinking maybe, just maybe I wasn't invisible after all. It was Friday, the last day of the quarter. My inbox had been suspiciously quiet, and my calendar invite from Julian, the director of business strategy, was suspiciously vague touchpoint. That's what he called it, a touchpoint. As if I were a loose wire. Someone planned to poke it with a stick. So I hoped I wore my navy blazer, the one that actually fits. I even dusted off a pair of heels. I hadn't touched since pre-pandemic. Office politics went digital. I'd been at the company nearly 6 years. I wasn't flashy, but I was reliable, the person who stayed late. Rewrote reports other people butchered, and flagged every client on the verge of ghosting us. Before they actually did, I was the one who tracked subtle changes in client engagement, and quietly sent account managers a heads up when someone hadn't replied to a QR, invite in 11 days and counting. The one who noticed when their tone got clipped, their questions got vague, or their budgets mysteriously shrank. No one asked me to do it, I just saw it. Built tools for it because losing clients hurts worse than tracking the signs, so yes. I thought the meeting was it, the promotion, the acknowledgement. The moment Julian was already seated when I walked in. Hands folded like a wax figure. Lisa from HR was there too, which should have been a clue, but I smiled, sat down, smoothed my skirt like a hopeful idiot. Julian leaned forward, eyebrows lifted like he was delivering a toast. Karen, he said, you've done an incredible job this year. And I smiled, because of course he started there. All promotions start with flattery, he continued. Your insights into client risk have been game-changing. Good, he's leading with results. This is it, you're steady. And your work has had a clear, measurable impact. I nodded slowly, holding it all in, not too proud. Not too eager, the internal monologue was screaming. It's finally happening. But I kept my face in that neutral, professional zone. They like the one that says I'm flattered. But not, I desperately need this. To feel like the last 5 years weren't a waste. Julian gave Lisa a look. She smiled with her mouth, not her eyes, and then he said it. Which is why we wanted to let you know first, before the announcement goes out, that we've decided to promote Thomas to associate director. There was a pause so long it made my ears ring. I blinked. I'm sorry, Thomas. Yes, Julian said, like it was a compliment. We've seen real leadership potential. He has a way of energizing the room. Lisa chimed in, nodding. People respond to him. People respond to fire alarms, too. Doesn't mean you give one a promotion. Thomas is the kind of guy who makes a spreadsheet, adds emojis to the headers, and calls it an innovation. He once asked if churn meant when a client cancels, or when they're just like quiet. He's late to most meetings, and leaves early if he has therapy, which usually involves bottomless mimosas, with his CrossFit friends. But sure, promote him. He's very visible, and apparently that's what counts. I don't remember what I said next exactly. Something gracious, something dead inside. I smiled, nodded, thanked them for the transparency, and walked out, on legs that didn't quite feel like mine. I made it all the way back to my desk before it hit me, like a slap across the soul. I built something, not just reports, a whole prototype, a system, one I designed quietly over the last year, in the margins of my evenings and weekends, a tool that flagged early signs of client disengagement, using behavioral markers and engagement decay curves. I didn't use company data. I didn't touch their servers. It was all mine, a demo, built off public models and theoretical client flows. I built it for them. I planned to pitch it this quarter. I had decks. I had a name. I had dreams of integrating it into the team's workflow, showing them that real retention isn't reactive. It's predictive, but no. Now I stared at my screen, numb, and opened a new document. I didn't throw anything, didn't cry. Just started typing subject. Formal resignation, effective immediately. The words came faster than I expected. Precise, no dramatic flourish, just clarity when it was done. I attached a link, the one I'd quietly built with a designer friend. Password protected, clean, professional, a private launch page on it, a 2-minute demo of my platform's results. Not the mechanics, not the engine, just what it could do, predict retention risk by account. Age, communication frequency, issue resolution, velocity, and satisfaction. Proxy indicators. Nothing proprietary, just brilliance they never bothered to ask about. I sent the resignation to Julian, seeking D. Lisa. The link came in a separate message 2 minutes later. Since you're investing in leadership, you might want to see what you passed over. I logged off early, walked out of the building with no fanfare, no box of belongings, just my badge in one hand and my dignity. Finally, in the other that night, I didn't drink, didn't spiral. I ordered pad thai, changed into pajamas, and watched as my inbox lit up like a Christmas tree. Julian, 5:12 p.m., saw your message. Please call me. We should discuss this, Lisa. 5:26 p.m. This came as a surprise. We'd love to schedule a conversation unknown. 6:41 p.m., someone from a competitor. It's in the link. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I watched my demo page hit double-digit views, then triple, then the first call came. From someone I'd met once at a tech mixer, someone who actually listened, when I spoke about early turn signals and predictive data modeling. And that was when I knew I didn't just walk away. I walked towards something. By the next morning, my resignation email had more views than a cat in a cardboard box. Someone had forwarded the link. Not surprising. My old company runs on passive-aggressive reply. All energy. And did you see this? Slack messages sent 12 seconds after someone breathes. Wrong. I pictured a silent wave, rolling through the open plan floor, everyone minimizing dashboards to click the demo. I could almost hear the sharp intakes of breath, as it looked real as it was real, because even though I hadn't given away how it worked, I'd shown them just enough to realize they had no idea what they've been sitting on. The Polish charts, the clean UI, the projected retention impact, the before and after snapshots, using public client simulations. Of course, nothing proprietary. I wasn't dumb. I'd spent 6 months, making sure it couldn't be traced back to anything. That would make legal twitch. Just impact, just results. Just enough to say, you could have had this. I spent that morning sipping coffee in a hoodie, while they quietly freaked out. At 9:00 a.m., I got a message from Daniel, one of the few product managers I actually liked. He said, "Did you seriously build that yourself?" I replied, "Not during work hours." He wrote back a single word. Damn, felt good, not smug, not vindictive, just correct. The emails kept coming. June, our SVP of strategy, who once told me I should soften the language in my performance review because it made me sound a little intense. Now he wanted to talk about next steps and aligning visions. Meanwhile, the industry was doing what the industry does, sniffing blood at 11:00 a.m. I got a message from a woman named Nyla at a firm I'd never heard of, one of those high-growth agencies, with a name that sounded like a skincare brand. Turns out they'd seen my demo. Nyla asked if I'd be open to coffee and a conversation. I was, but I was also cautious. I just untangled myself from a place that praised me in private and passed me over in public. I wasn't about to hand this idea to another room full of smiling sharks, so I did what I never used to do. I asked for more. I sent Nyla a one-line reply. If we talk, I'd need to know up front. This isn't just about hiring me. I'm looking for equity, autonomy, and platform ownership. She responded, "You're not the product, Karen. Your system is, we want to back it." I stared at that message for a long time, because here's the truth. I didn't build that prototype just to prove I could. I built it because I was tired of watching companies hemorrhage clients, and blame it on morale, tired of hearing, "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." As if the bridge wasn't actively on fire, I built it, because I saw the patterns before anyone else did, because no one ever listened until it was too late, because I wanted something that listened back, and now someone wanted to help me make it real. Back at my old company, things were getting awkward. Daniel texted again. "Thomas is struggling." I bet he was. Thomas couldn't forecast turn. If it printed itself on his iced coffee lid, I pictured him pacing in his new office, blinking at a report he didn't know how to interpret, calling meetings he wasn't prepared for, saying things like, "Let's circle back on that to stall for time." Almost felt bad, almost. At 2:03 p.m., Julian finally called. Not emailed, called. I didn't answer. He followed up with a long, tortured message about recalibrating internal strategy and how they were reconsidering how to best leverage. My capabilities, nice try, Julian. You don't get to promote a frat bro for lighting up the room and then walk it back once you realize the room's on fire. So I let the message sit. I didn't need to reply. Not yet, instead. I met Nyla for coffee the next morning. A real cafe, Noda. We work with a drip machine. And 5 people pretending to read The Economist. She was younger than I expected. Direct smart. She slid a slim deck across the table. Without asking for an NDA. This is what we're building. This is what we think your system could do. You'd own it, we'd fund it, we'd build around you. It didn't feel like a pitch. Felt like a correction for every meeting, where I'd been told to let Thomas take the lead. For every slide deck I'd rewritten behind the scenes, without credit for every moment. I'd sat in a room full of people, nodding at someone else, for repeating the thing I just said. 5 minutes earlier, it felt like a small, perfect reset. By the time we stood to leave, I already knew I was going to say yes. Back at home, I opened my laptop and refreshed the demo analytics. 187 unique views, 3 new subscribers to the waitlist form, 1 contact request from a company that had dropped us 6 months ago, asking if I was available for consulting. I laughed out loud. Then, at 4:46 p.m., the inevitable happened. Julian emailed again, this time with a calendar invite subject, exploring new opportunities together. You wanted to meet, he'd looped in, RVP said. They were reimagining how we support innovation and would love to discuss the potential of integrating your platform internally. With you at the helm, in other words. Come back, lead the thing. We'll finally listen now that we're panicking. I stared at it for a long time, the polite version of begging. And honestly, it didn't even feel satisfying as that platform. It was built during nights, when I was too wired to sleep, after being talked over in meetings, and told to stay in my lane. It was built after proposals were ignored, after Julian told me to focus on people first, culture instead of data models, after I realized I was doing the work, and making it easy for them to ignore me. So no, I didn't want to walk back into that building, as a founder of the same company. That treated me like a spreadsheet ghost. I wanted something better. I wanted mine. So I declined the invite with 1-sentence thanks, but I'm already in conversation, with a firm that believes in this system, without needing a breakdown to see its value. I clicked send, felt the tension leave my shoulders, like a sigh I'd been holding for 3 years. And then I went back to work on my platform, my terms, with people who didn't need a crash to recognize value. The best part, the real collapse, hadn't even started yet. I didn't expect it to unravel that fast. I thought it might take a few weeks, a month, maybe something slow and bureaucratic, like the kind of organizational breakdown that starts as missed deadlines and ends in some poor HR associate writing a LinkedIn post about exciting leadership transitions. But no, they lasted 3 days. 3 days after I resigned and sent that link, I got a text from Daniel that just said, Thomas is having a full-blown crisis in the war room. I blinked war room. They were calling it a war room. Let me be clear, this is a tech, adjacent marketing firm. That once threw a wellness week, where they handed out lavender, hand sanitizer, and played whale sounds in the bathroom. If they were calling in a war room, someone had already lit something on fire. I texted back, let me guess. No idea how to pull Q2 risk projections. Without my tracker, he responded with a crying emoji. Then they don't even know where the tracker is. Karen Thomas asked if it's in Excel or Google Drive. I sat back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. I'd left behind a system not officially. Of course I didn't owe them anything, but I hadn't deleted the tools I'd built either. I'd spent years keeping that team afloat, with dashboards, red flag alerts, and automated reminder workflows for client check-ins, most of which I coded on my own time. And apparently no one knew how any of it worked, not even Thomas, who once told me he didn't really do spreadsheets because they stressed him out. No, now he was the director. God help them by the end of that week. I heard through the grapevine that 2 legacy clients had complained about slipping, communication standards, and inconsistent reporting. One of them was the very same client, whose risk patterns I'd flagged. 4 times once in an email Julian never opened, and 3 times in Slack messages that got ignored, in favor of a gift thread about Friday bagels. So yes, things were breaking, and they were breaking fast. Meanwhile, I was onboarding with Neela's firm. Except onboarding is the wrong word. I wasn't becoming an employee. I was becoming a partner. They moved quickly, faster than any place I'd ever worked. Within 48 hours of our coffee meeting, I had an offer letter within a week. I had a contract, equity resources, a development team, a product manager who didn't blink when I explained conditional turn modeling, using sentiment decay over time. He said, "Cool, we'll sketch the logic tree tomorrow." I almost cried on day 9. Post-resignation, I got another email from Julian. Subject: retouch point opportunity body. Karen, I understand you've moved on, but I'd still love to explore possibilities for collaboration. There may be a way to integrate your system into our existing structure, with you leading that initiative. As a contracted partner translation, please save us, but from the outside now, so we don't have to admit we screwed up publicly. I didn't respond. Mostly because I was in a planning session with Nyla, mapping out beta rollout phases and discussing pricing tiers. We had real funding, real deadlines, real momentum, and I realized, sitting in that glass conference room with a whiteboard full of acronyms and lines and sticky notes, that I felt something I hadn't felt in years: respected. No one was trying to soften my language. No one was asking me to run my ideas past Thomas for tone. No one was calling me intense like it was a diagnosis. They just listened and built and let me lead. The final straw came 2 weeks later. A former client reached out, not to them, to me. Subject: are you consulting? It was short, professional, chilly even. They didn't say it outright, but I knew what had happened. Their account had slipped. The follow-ups weren't happening. Reports were wrong. They were noticing the gaps. The gaps were me, I responded, with a link to my new company's waitlist form and a note that I wasn't available for private consulting, but would be announcing something public soon. They replied, understood. Looking forward to it. That's when it clicked. It wasn't just that my old company hadn't seen my value. It's that they'd built their entire functionality around it and still managed to convince themselves it wasn't worth acknowledging. They wanted the results without recognizing the source, and now the source had left the building. At 6:03 p.m. on a Monday, I got a final email from Lisa. It was longer, more formal, full of "We appreciate all your contributions, and we recognize the impact of your work, and we deeply regret how your departure unfolded." Then came the line that made me laugh out loud. "We'd like to offer you a senior-level consulting role with full ownership of your platform inside our structure. Should you be open to rejoining us in a new capacity?" Oh, honey, I was halfway through a licensing deal with 3 clients, running a beta test with real-time engagement, scoring and finalizing a keynote outline for an upcoming tech panel. Come back to that, to the place that gave a man with no email folders and a Giphy addiction a promotion. Over me, no. Thank you. I drafted a reply, polite. "Hi, Lisa. Thank you for the kind words. I'm currently leading full development and external licensing of my platform, so I won't be rejoining Westbridge in any capacity. Wishing you all the best as you navigate your transition warmly." I paused, reread it, then added one last sentence. "P.S. If you ever need help identifying early signs of client churn, I know a great tool for that." I hit send, closed the tab, and then I opened a new one to approve. The final UI mock UPS for our official launch. By the end of that month, we had 4 pilot clients, a social media manager, and a wait list of companies asking if they could test drive our risk dashboard. Every time I heard Thomas now, it was in a whisper. Daniel told me he was still finding his footing and mostly working remotely. Translation: hiding in his apartment, waiting for the fire to burn out. Meanwhile, I had never felt more grounded. The thing that used to keep me up at night, proving my worth, was gone. As I had not with a speech, not with a tantrum, just with results. I used to think the worst feeling was being overlooked. It's not the worst feeling. is being depended on by people who refuse to admit they depend on you, but the best feeling. Walking away with everything you built, still in your hands, and realizing no one can take it from you now. I thought the worst was over. No lawsuits, no client drama. My inbox was calm. My hair was doing this weird shiny thing. It only does when I'm not losing sleep. Over men named Julian for once. It felt like I could exhale without someone asking me to loop in Thomas. For optics, we had traction. We had early praise, we had a name. After weeks of brainstorming sessions, that felt like naming a child and a product. At the same time, we'd landed on SignalSpan. Sounded like a Wi-Fi network that actually works, which is more than I could say for my last apartment. SignalSpan did exactly what the name implied. It captured early behavioral signals and measured how far they were drifting from baseline. Trust, we weren't selling magic. We were selling foresight. And it was working. Right up until the FedEx envelope landed on my desk, like a brick wrapped in cardstock. The return address, Westbridge Strategy Group Legal. Inside, a cease and desist letter, followed by a formal lawsuit, claiming full ownership of SignalSpan. Their argument, that I developed it within the scope of my employment, and leveraged internal strategies, and privileged systems, which was rich, considering. These were the same people who once asked if churn was. The same as like mood swings. But for clients, I read it, blinked, read it again, then said something under my breath. That would have gotten me fired. In most corporate Slack channels, it would have been funny if it hadn't started. Unraveling everything within 48 hours. 2 pilot clients paused. Another ghosted. A PR contact said we'd love to cover the launch. Once the legal stuff clears up, I hadn't felt this invisible since my 3rd performance review. Where the word. Quietly reliable was used like a personality disorder. Nyla tried to rally the team, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Our dev lead asked if we needed to rebrand the algorithm, which is adorable when you realize how little. Startups know about how lawsuits work. And for a moment, I really did think about folding. Not because they were right, but because fighting them would cost. More than just money, it would cost focus. It would cost momentum. And it might cost me the thing I built. Then I opened my archive drive. Turns out anxiety has perks. One of them is saving everything. Build logs, file metadata. GitHub commit history screenshots with timestamps. All of it stored on my personal laptop at night, while the rest of my former team was at company. Happy hour discussing the ROI of ping pong tables. Then came the receipts, Slack threads from Julian. Like this gem, this feels a little too technical for what we're trying to be. Let's table it, not sure. Clients want forecasting focus on chemistry. And then my favorite, we didn't ask for this. She built it on her own. That one wasn't even from me. That was from the CTO, in a thread I'd never been included in. Someone else had been an anonymous former colleague, sent me a file full of screenshots. Internal Slack messages from leadership after I left, talking about how they knew the tool was mine, and wondering if legal could massage the ownership. Narrative, sure, and maybe. Santa can ghost write the terms and conditions. I sent it all to Evan, my lawyer. He read through everything, then looked at me. We're countersuing, he said. Defamation, interference, and corporate gaslighting. Hey, he didn't say that last one. But the tone was there, the months that followed, were a surreal mix of courtroom drama and corporate spin. Their lawyers called me calculating, like I was supposed to apologize for using Excel without adult supervision. They accused me of strategically timing my resignation, because God forbid, a woman quit after a man gets promoted for breathing. In meetings I testified, Evan presented the logs, the calendar entries, the Git history, the Slack messages we showed, build times like 11:43 p.m. on a Saturday, labeled things like version 2, for draft, because Jesus Christ, this is getting good, and still, they doubled down right up until the final hearing. The judge read the case wasn't asked, the kind of questions. That made their lead counsel shift in his seat, like a kid who forgot to study. Then she took a long pause and ruled. SignalSpan was mine, all of it. The lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. The defamation claim was upheld, and in one perfect sentence, she called their actions deliberate attempts to weaponize internal ambiguity after knowingly rejecting the work. We won fully, publicly, permanently. The press pounced, tech blogs called it a wake-up call for corporate IP abuse. One headline read, "Startup founder wins IP lawsuit. After company tries to claim the innovation, they ignored another ran with. Westbridge. Execs resign amid legal scandal and public backlash. It would have been a victory lap if it weren't followed by the real kicker. A month later, Westbridge quietly filed for bankruptcy. Apparently, clients don't love it. When you try to sue your former employee and lose publicly, their biggest accounts fled, board members distanced, and the brand once praised for its people-first values was now synonymous with, tried to steal from their own staff. Meanwhile, SignalSpan bounced back hard. Every pause client returned in a new one. A Fortune 100 firm that had been circling for weeks signed a multi-year deal without blinking. The email read, "We're investing in the platform, sure, but mostly. We're investing in the woman who fought for it." We popped champagne. I framed the cease and desist letter and hung it next to the quote Julian once gave me during a one-on-one. "Karen's just really into data. I'm more of a vibe guy, except my vibe now had revenue." If you've stuck with me this far, here's the part that matters. They didn't believe in what I was building. They told me I was too focused, too technical, too intense. They ignored it, then tried to steal it and failed. Because I had the receipts. So build your thing, save your work. Track your time and when they come for what you made. Don't panic. Just smile and meet them in court with version history. So that's how it ended. They tried to claim what they once ignored, and when that didn't work, they tried to break me in court, but they lost, because I didn't back down as I had the proof, because this time I chose myself and I do it again. Now I want to know what you think. Did I do the right thing walking away? Was it fair to fight back this hard? Let me know in the comments. And if this story hit something in you, don't forget to subscribe.